Hey guys, welcome to the Sea Planner podcast. My name is David, and I have a very special guest. Her name is Jennifer Gomez.
Yeah.
She's, I guess, selected series and a Sea Planner follower.
I definitely am. IG, Spotify.
What got you interested in our little movement, our little way of introducing people?
So for me, as soon as I saw that, like, anybody from the desert, I mean, I think that's the greatest thing is a lot of people get caught up in, like, oh, it's Palm Springs, it's a place to go party or retire stuff. But, like, for us, that was home. That's, like, where we grew up. So I definitely know you by association of, like, your brother. And then, obviously, we're all just, like, friends of friends. So to, like, have anybody starting any type of venture from the desert, you want to support them. And then once you... like, that's kind of like your way into the door, but then once you start listening, then it's like you're stuck for other reasons. So, like, I love hearing all of your stories, going out and finding different people from the valley or finding people with something to say and just giving them a place to speak, giving them a place to have a voice if they don't have any other place to go.
Oh, that's really cool because I did the inverse of that. So I started the Sea Planner podcast and I went in looking to see who was following me or the podcast. And I ran into your profile. And I've known you, like you said, through association, through seeing all the likes and the comments. And it's really nice of you to support what we're doing. And then I started looking at your story, and it really inspired me. Like, it really took me back to why I wanted to do the Sea Planner podcast. And well, now I have you here, and thank you for coming, for sure.
Of course, I'm happy to be here, and thank you for having me, for sure.
What do you want to start with? Like, you can tell people the news of you finishing school.
Yeah.
What, today?
Yeah, today's the last day. I have to submit some work for my master's, and then in 2 weeks, 2 weeks from today, actually, I graduate with my master's in education.
Congratulations.
Thank you, from USC. So go
Hey.
Trojans.
So how was the transition to finishing school through, like, via Zoom meetings and stuff?
So thankfully, my program was already online because that's what I chose. So being an educator, I teach middle schoolers. I needed something that was going to be flexible because sometimes I have kids in after-school activities, or there's just times when I can't leave the campus. So there's times when I went straight from work and I just logged on into class.
Okay.
So for me, I started off Zoom the whole time, and I think that's honestly what helped me maintain my sanity when we transitioned into Zoom for everything else.
So you're already ready for that?
Yeah, to an extent. It's different for sure, though. I didn't know what to expect out of an online community for a master's program. Like, I love being in the classroom. I love learning. I love teaching. But I think when you want to make the most out of something, you definitely do.
I'd also like to add that during that whole this past, how long has it been since you started your first your chemo session?
I started chemo in December.
So during this whole time, you still been fighting through it.
Yeah.
How does somebody just continue to do what you do, like stay positive and motivated? Like, what keeps you going? What keeps you going?
There's a few different things. So, like, I'm looking at my life, and so I started going to USC. Like, I was a UCLA fan, and I never wanted to go to USC. It's actually my sister-in-law who started going off to USC. She passed away before being able to finish her master's. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go to USC for her. As much as I hate it, I didn't think I was going to like it. Never rep red. Now I'm always repping red. So for me to start my master's journey with her in mind, when I did get my cancer diagnosis, I didn't want that to, like, stop me. So I definitely had a lot of, like, her influence pushing me. And I think the biggest thing is, when you get diagnosed with cancer, you kind of feel like, okay, now that's going to be my life. That's who I am. And it is part of who I am. Like, I know I'm never going to be that person anymore that I was before, but I don't want it to stop my life.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
Was there any time that you were like, maybe didn't have that mentality? Maybe you were just like...
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think when I was first diagnosed, it was kind of just a shock. Like, it was right in the middle of summer. I was in school still for USC and everything. And
so this was last year.
Yeah. So I found a lump in June of 2020. So during COVID. And then in July, I was actually diagnosed. And
you were doing breast screening, or were you just showering?
I was just showering.
Oh, okay.
And like, it's not like I was intentionally doing like a routine self-check. I for some reason something fell off, and like days before I'd been feeling kind of weird, and then I just found something, and I'm like, okay, this isn't normally what I feel like. I know my body.
Right.
And just an hour later, I was on the phone with my doctor, like, hey, I feel something. What do I do? It's like just completely nervous.
So then what comes next? Like, hey, come in and we'll get you checked out.
So because everything was already super COVID, like this was when we had no idea what was going on. Everything was shut down.
Oh,
my doctor was only doing virtual calls. So I called, like, this was on a Thursday. I got a virtual appointment with him on a Tuesday. And I told him, I'm like, listen, I don't know what it is. I don't want to even call it a lump. I'm just going to say, it feels like there's something there.
Right.
And it's never there. So he was like, okay, well, since I couldn't go in to go see him, he's like, I'm just going to go send you to get an ultrasound. So that was like 2 days after that appointment. I managed to get it in quick. And from the ultrasound, they were able to see, yeah, there is something there. And it looks like it is, like there is something there that could be breast cancer. So like from that moment, it was like, all right, so now I can officially call it a lump. Like, we're actually getting serious now. It's not just, I don't know, I didn't just strain something and there's buildup there or fatty tissue. So from there, I went to a biopsy where they actually take a really long needle and they actually go in and pull out samples from that lump. And
are you doing this all alone?
All of this has to be alone because of
COVID.
They wouldn't let anybody in for all of this so far. It was just like, all right, you have to go here, but yeah, we can't allow anybody in here with you. They can wait in the car. But I'm like, well, what's the point? I don't know how long it's going to take.
Well, maybe like, I guess for my more specific, my question, did any of your family members know? Did any of your friends know?
So I didn't tell any of like my family until after that ultrasound, because I was like, well, what if it's nothing? Right. What if I don't want to get them scared. I definitely had told a few friends too, because I'm like, well, what if I do need transportation to something? What if an appointment leaves me like weak and incapable to drive? So I had like a very small, close knit group of people that I told right at the beginning, just in case I needed that extra support. It wasn't until after my double mastectomy that I came out and I told everybody, because I don't want to bring people in and make them feel like scared or nervous for me if I don't even know what it is.
Exactly.
So
that's a good way to look at it, and not start making the future very dreadful. Just focus on the present. So that kept you very strong, or what kept you going? Being in that in your master's program, what kind of kept you all together? Yeah,
it was a lot of things. So there was definitely my master's, like, okay, I have a goal that I still want to get to. So having like that set goal of something in your life and not wanting it to get pushed back, because I feel like if I would have taken time off, I don't know when I would have graduated, or what if I get too like caught up in this that I don't go back. Like it kind of helped me see what my life can still be after cancer. And then not only that, like I have 2 little nieces. Like I want them to see their aunt, their tia, be strong. And thankfully I've had genetic testing where it wasn't supposed to happen to me. It wasn't something that happened in my family. But I'm still thinking about them and their future. And so I don't want them to feel like if something comes up, if there's an obstacle, that they should go around it. They should go a different way. No, take that obstacle head on. So like for me, a lot of it is seeing my family and seeing my students. I didn't want them to have to deal with a long-term sub and like not have their teacher there with them. Like, because then they know something's really wrong. So part of it was having a brave face, but that actually did kind of help me keep going.
Jesus, that's really cool. I was just thinking about your friend that you said passed away before finishing.
My
did
sister-in-law, yeah.
Your sister-in-law?
Yeah.
Was she big part of like why you kept going as well?
For sure.
Just to have you like, I don't know, kind of like finish something that you started for her, not for her, but like
with her in mind.
With her in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Like so I had known her since I was in middle school. Like she was my brother's best friend, and then they grew up and had kids together and got married. And I think depending on like your culture and your beliefs, you feel like people are there supporting you. So even since COVID has really started, I lost both my grandmothers, and I'm just like,
I'm sorry to hear that.
No, yeah, and for me, it was just like I know that they're there with me.
Was that through COVID?
No, they both passed for different reasons, but like it kept my family from being able to go like to Mexico and see them. But it's like, again, I think you really have to remember who you are, like what you value when something this big hits you, because that's the stuff that's gonna help keep you pushing through it.
Wow, that's very inspirational. For sure.
Thanks.
Just because like I started looking at the people that were following me, and I just kept seeing like you kept people updated on your condition and also like your school. Where do you teach? What kids are being blessed by your your teaching? Is it out here in the desert or kids out in LA?
It's out in LA. So I had moved out of the desert to go to Cal Poly Pomona, and then from there, like going in through a credential program, they place you at local schools, and it just so happened that I got a job at one of those schools that I was student teaching at. So I'm out in the Covina area, and just a bunch of crazy middle schoolers that are blessed, but they get roasted on a daily basis. Ms. Gomez goes hard with them.
So you show them a little tough love.
Absolutely.
Because you know that if you can handle certain things, that they should be able to handle life. You know.
Yeah. I feel like especially at that age, you really get impacted by other people or what they say, and I think all of us have those experiences in middle school. That's a rough age. But it's kind of just being that example, like, yeah, I look like what I look like now, or yeah, I can afford a place to live, I can afford my car, but it's like, it took work to get here. And I think that's what a lot of kids forget. You only see the finished product. You don't actually see what it took to build that person up.
So in middle school, were you a very outgoing person? Were you very...
you could say that.
Friend, yeah?
Yeah, definitely. I was that kind of person who, if I saw you sitting alone, it's like, hey, do you want to be friends? Okay, cool. Like, we're just going to be friends. Like, I don't know. I never shied away from people just because I think it's kind of like your whole story, like the whole reason you have the podcast. You never know what they're going through. And sometimes they need somebody to be that person to reach out. So I'm an introvert's best friend because I'm that extrovert that's going to get you, like, out of your shell a little bit.
I guess it's really hard to read somebody unless you, like, we've been talking about, me and my buddies, that this is very necessary to sit down with somebody and just to get to know them a little bit, because you never, like you said, we never know what they're going through. I always try to compliment or make somebody's day better by acknowledging them.
Exactly.
And you can tell, like, they'll take that, and it's like you're depositing a certain energy, and then they'll go do it with 2-3 other people because they feel inspired to continue that energy. And I think when people listen to this story, your story, there's no excuses. I feel like once you listen to something like this, it's like, hey, what are you doing? Like, let's get it together. Like, let's see what you start to look inside of yourself and take Jennifer's story and run with it. I think you empower. I think that's very empowering.
Thank you.
So I really appreciate your bravery coming in, like going into your diagnosis and having no ability to take anybody with you to your appointments and stuff like that. It must have been very tough.
No, it was. I think the all of the stuff leading up to having a double mastectomy, like, it was okay because I knew there were going to be kind of quicker stuff, but my surgery, they said, was up to like 6 hours. And like normally you go to the hospital, like, even like, it sucks because COVID even took away like the ability for somebody to be there if their wife's giving birth or whatever it may be.
Right.
So like for me, like this was huge. Like I was going to be under anesthesia for 6 hours with like 3 hours of prep going into my surgery, and nobody could be there. And I'm so thankful because like, even though like that memory will haunt me forever of like my mom dropping me off at the hospital, like, okay, good luck. Like, I'm so thankful that I had nurses who cared. Like, I had an older nurse who was just like, oh my gosh, you're just like around my daughter's age. Like, I'm so sorry you're going through this. But like, she let me cry. She like hugged me. Like, even though it was COVID, it was like, they were there for you. Mm-hmm. So every little like piece of like good that you bring into somebody's day is super helpful. Because again, even if you do know what they're going through, sometimes maybe they haven't heard something in a minute and they need that reassurance. So it was definitely hard going through a lot of these things alone and like not having somebody there, because I stayed overnight at the hospital.
6 hour operation?
6 hours. Yeah. So it was hard not waking up to like family. But again, I'm thankful for, you know, those nurses who, even though they've been working who knows how long that day, could still manage to like be kind to somebody who they know is like scared.
You said that the nurse said that you were like her daughter's age.
Mm-hmm.
You're pretty young, you know.
Yeah.
And then you also said that you had genetic testing. What happened? Like, is this an abnormality? Something like a freak cell?
Like pretty much. Like I said, it wasn't supposed to happen to me. Like
right.
On paper,
right.
This should have never happened. And so like I have so many specialists now as doctors, but like I go to my oncologist and he's like, we can't tell you why this happened,
right.
But we can tell you it's not because of the deodorant you use. It's not because of the food that you eat. That's just not how it works. So it's just crazy because you have something that happened to you and you're just never going to know why.
What would you say to somebody that just got a diagnosis and is looking around like ready to bawl out and cry and let all the emotions, because you probably thought at one point like, damn, my life is over.
I did.
Because it does run through your head, you know?
No, absolutely. Like whether it was because of the surgery or because early on you don't know what stage you're at. Mm-hmm. It's not until you have that surgery that they can tell you this is exactly where you're at in your cancer stage. But if somebody like right now is just finding a lump or finding out that it is cancerous, like my biggest thing is find that like close bubble, or now with thankfully that's the positive of social media, find a hashtag and find people that like you can just vent to, even if you don't know them. Like there are going to be people who are completely willing to share their story with you to provide you some of that comfort, but for sure cry it out. Like you need to
grieve.
Yeah. As brave as I feel like I have been, I had so many days where all I did was just cry, and that's what's being human. You need to acknowledge like what you're feeling.
After you cry, you feel better.
100%.
After you go through those emotions, you feel better.
Yeah.
You can't feel worse. You've already exerted that energy. You're gonna feel so much better. I've been crying a lot. Me and my wife just got some like very heavy news. Mm-hmm. So we were halfway through her pregnancy, or my wife's halfway through her pregnancy.
Yeah, give her the credit there.
she's halfway through her pregnancy, and they found an abnormality with the heart, our baby's heart, and so she's gonna be born with half a heart. So she's gonna go through a lot, and so we start grieving. You know, we start to grieve things that haven't happened yet, mm-hmm. And instead of focusing on like the very present and figuring out how to manage that in the future. Of course, you're gonna grieve and you feel like, oh man, my life is gonna be different, or mm-hmm. you have all these. You're grieving for certain expectations that you think you were gonna have, but that's what you're grieving for. Like, you're not grieving for anything that you've lost, because you really haven't lost anything. No one's passed away. You really haven't lost anything.
And you still don't know.
And you still don't know.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that correlates with like the instant grief, like the instant reaction of finding out your diagnosis. Same thing. My wife wasn't allowed to bring anybody into any of the ultrasounds initially, and then after finding out what was going on, they made an exception going in there, and that's very tough, because she told me, she's like, I don't know if what would I have done if you weren't there to see, like, or to hear the doctors give her all these explanations.
Yeah,
it's tough, but I think you have to express it. You have to make your bubble and hold on tight, I guess, and see what happens. Because you really don't know. I grieved a lot, but I realized I've been listening, like you said, hashtag. So I listened to my wife started following. I guess the diagnosis for the baby is HLHS. So it's like, I really don't know what that means. But I mean, I do know what it means. I don't know the name. It basically, the baby has the left ventricle didn't develop.
Okay.
So now you only have one chamber to pump
all of that. All
of the blood, oxygenated and unoxygenated, through the body. So the baby will have open heart surgery as soon as she's born, and then a few months another heart surgery, and then if everything goes well, down the road, like 2-3 years later, she'll have another one.
Yeah. And
that will optimize her lifestyle for her to be able to be semi-productive, not very active child because of the risks of her heart. I don't know. I guess I don't know where I'm going with this, but it's just tough receiving that first diagnosis and then starting to figure out like what your next steps are. Now that you had you have had 8 rounds of chemo, right?
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Oh my gosh.
Now you're just waiting for another results, or did they tell you that you're in the clear?
So that's where that's where it gets difficult, and that's where like the emotional part of it like comes in. So like, first of all, you're breeding a warrior in there. Like, your daughter's already a fighter. Like, that's incredible. Like,
thank you.
Props to her. But like, for me, we think that we could have gotten it all out with just that surgery, because they do check your lymph nodes and they see if it's spread, and we didn't find anything.
Okay.
But chemo, when they take all of the tissue out and they test it, they run it against like a sample of other women who have similar qualities to mine, not in age, but in like the breast tissue and things like that. And my reoccurrence score, so like how likely it is to come back, was pretty high. It was like a 56. So I don't know if that means I'm part of the 56 where it is going to come back, or the 44 where it won't. You can't determine that.
Okay.
So chemo was like, okay, you're 29. We got to make sure that you have life ahead of you, because what if there is something still there? So chemo was like, okay, we're just gonna clean out your system as best we can. So like, I've never fully heard those words like you're in remission or we don't see any cancer, stuff like that. So I'm kind of just waiting for like my oncologist to be like, okay, now you can officially just start to relax a little bit and like live your life. Obviously, cancer is always going to be in the back of my head. It can come back, and it has come back with people that I know. But I think just I want my doctor to be like, yeah, you're okay, you know. But I have another surgery coming up on Friday, and it's like that one is to just kind of put those implants in that are going to stay with me long term. And I kind of feel like, well, my surgeon, when she goes in too, she'll be able to see, does she see any new lumps forming or things like that? And that'll be like, okay, nothing has come back. We're okay for now.
Okay.
Yeah. So after that surgery, I go back to see my oncologist, and then we do what's called hormone therapy. So breast cancer can feed off of different types of like estrogen hormones, and mine was estrogen reactive. So I start like a pill for 5 years that like keeps me in menopause and medical menopause, just to make sure that there's nothing in my body that's going to kind of like produce something new. So it's still a long journey ahead, but I keep saying I've made it through the hardest part.
That's pretty heavy though. Like,
yeah.
Wow.
At 30 years old, I'm in menopause, y'all. It's great. Hot flashes are amazing.
No, but that does. Wow, that's so heavy. I didn't even know how to process it. That just because you're so strong and you're so like lighthearted, and you talk about it like it's just part of life. Like it is for you, but not a lot of people have that bravery. I think people just fold under pressure, and I think you're shining. You're a beacon of light for sure. And
I think like I've said, it's not like I've just been like this perfect, like I never, like you can see in some of my posts I'm crying, like right. Like that's it. But the idea that always sticks with me is, again, I don't want cancer to have just taken everything from me. Like I want to look back and be like, okay, 10 years down the line, cancer hasn't come back, and oh my gosh, remember when I went through that? Yeah, it sucked, but look at how much I still managed to get done.
So it doesn't make you who you are. It's just something that happened to you. It's not who you are.
Exactly. And it's like I said, I'm always going to carry this idea of kind of like, what if it comes back? Mm-hmm. But I'm always planning for it not to. Like, I'm not going to be like, oh, if it comes back, am I ready for it? Like, no. Like, it should be like, look at what, like, I have a master's. I still have kids to go teach. Like, I am still so fortunate with so many other parts of my life. I think that's what we need to like remember, because a lot of times that gets foggy, and we shouldn't forget that stuff exists.
It's true though. It's true. Yeah. As a teacher, you do have to look at the outcomes and not get stuck on like the problem in the word problem. Yeah. No. Yeah.
And it's like I tell my kids, like, it's not that this was a mistake, like this was meant to happen, but if you're in school and you do make a mistake, you learn from it. So for me, it's like, what am I learning from this? And do I want it again to just be that one thing that I'm thinking about day in and day out? It's like, no. So I've learned how to like communicate better. I took charge of my body. I definitely have learned to appreciate my body. And I think that's really important for especially women out there. Like, so many of us are looking at our bodies so negatively, like, what can we change? I don't look like these people. But it's like, at the same time, our bodies are keeping us going. Yeah. And like something like this, like, I have no sensation now. Like, I can never breastfeed a child again. And it's like, but that's okay, because every other part of my body is keeping me alive. So I can't always wish that I had lost that extra 5 pounds or not eaten that food, because guess what? My body's still going, and I have to be grateful for that. So it's a lot.
No, it is though. But you like you said, you cried a lot. Mm-hmm. You had to grow. It's a learning experience. I think that's where I've been with everything that's been happening in just the last few years. I was very introverted. I was very like not social at all, and I realized like my biggest hurdle is to attack my weaknesses. So I've been trying to learn how to do interviews, learn how to talk to people. I've gained a lot of empathy. I've gained a lot of respect for, like you said, figuring out or not jumping into conclusions of people's, life or life choices, because I never know what they're going through. Yeah. And like you as a young educator, you have a lot to bring to the table, and people might look at you as like this young, naive, silly kid that's ambitious or something, but little do they know, So I don't know, it's just you're very insightful, because you're not, a lot of people would choose not to talk about or they would call them shortcomings or defects or whatever. I mean, you look at it as something that you embrace, because now you can lift somebody.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't tell my students right away. It wasn't until I knew I was going to start losing my hair that I was like, okay, their teacher's going to look different, so I need to be straightforward with them. And I was like, and this shouldn't be hidden, because one, what if one of my students knows somebody who's going through it? I can be there for them too. And two, like, I don't want them to think that I'm ashamed of it. So when I knew I was going to start losing my hair and I knew that, like, this is my path, I'm going through chemo, I told my students. It was so hard to do it online too, because, like, this is something that you wish you could just tell everybody face to face. And ever since then, like, my students have been so awesome. Like,
really,
shout out to them for one. Some of them always like check in on me, like, hey, how are you today? Like, just, or like, good job. Like, when I told them I was done with chemo, those kids made me cry with all of their sweet messages. It was incredible. But, like, I think everybody needs to see somebody going through something again and just overcoming it. And they know that I've had bad days where, like, I'm just in class, I'm like, all right, we need to take it easy today because I'm feeling super nauseous. They're like, yeah, okay, that's fine. Like, let's take it easy. And they love it too. Like, it's a break for them. But, like, people need to know that, again, one, have empathy and sympathy for people, because you don't know. They had no idea. I go to the store and people think I'm fine. I get compliments on my hair. I'm like, yo, it's a wig, but thank you. Like, I appreciate that. And it's just, I think through sharing your experience, it really does teach people, like, be kind, because you seriously don't know.
Yeah, you're set, and you're also planting seeds of hope, because obviously technology now goes a long ways, but emotional stability is very important, especially when you're going through something. This journey is something very taxing, I guess you would say. Your students, do they really fully understand, like, how did you go about explaining to them? So
it kind of was a trial for me, because before I told my students, before they knew anything, I told my nieces. And one of them is right around that middle school age. So I kind of, like, fed off of her and took how that conversation with her went, and then applied it to my students. So they're all fully aware of, like, what cancer is, but they definitely they don't all know, because they all haven't been through it, like, what that means on a person or their body or their hair or whatever it may be. So I think through this experience, one, I'm so thankful, because, like, they built, I think some of them really built respect for me, like, instantly through that, because, again, they didn't know who I was. I've gone to teach at, like, fully kind of, like, Latino high schools, where I walk in and based off of how it looked, they're like, cool, a white girl is going to tell us what to do. And I'm like, hey, wait, yo entiendo español, puedo hablar español. Wait, what? Yeah, I'm Mexican, guys. So it's again kind of like this perception, and I'm kind of knocking down those walls for all of these kids to be like, whoa, okay, we should stop judging people too, because especially at that age, they kind of do. That's kind of like what they live for. And especially with their teachers, they just are like, okay, I don't really know who you are, should I really trust you? And then by being so vulnerable, I think it opens that window for them to come to me too and be like, hey, this is what I'm going through. And it did. Do you decide to be vulnerable on purpose for that reason, to break those barriers, to be, I mean, sometimes when for instance, for me, I share something as just with anybody, to let them in. I'll share, I don't know, an experience, or maybe something to do with our diagnosis with the baby, and you notice a demeanor change. You notice that people, I guess they look at you a little different. Yeah. Do you embrace that? Do you embrace that people change up on you, or do you not get, you know? There's that has definitely been a learning experience. So, like, it's been hard for me to, like, reach out to, like, old friends and just, like, compliment them on something, because I feel like some people kind of feel obligated to be like, oh, how are you? Or, like, are you okay? But I feel like we're all learning. And that's the thing that I've been taking to heart. Like, there are, again, people who've never been affected by something like this. So they're learning how to communicate with somebody with cancer. Right. And for me, I'm learning how to be the recipient of that type. Because normally I'm the one who's, like, always like, oh, hey, how are you? Do you need anything? And now I have to be the one that's kind of being taken care of. but I'm completely open to it because it's showing sympathy, and it's like you never know who's actually affected by it, and maybe they can't say anything yet, so they're kind of like warming up to you to be able to say something. So it's just a game of patience, and really a game of like really understanding we are all learning because we are all involved in some way or another.
Wow, you're so grown up. No, because it just takes a lifetime to get to that point. And I think only with pain and suffering comes growth, comes...
it's true.
Yeah, you know, like you kind of have the tools to help people learn. That's another reason why I brought you on the podcast, is because as a teacher, I always feel like we have such a I feel like I'm a teacher. I feel like I show people certain things, and I'm an educator. I work at a school. I'm not directly in a classroom, but we teach people indirectly or directly all the time. Just 100%. We're always being a role model. Whether you're a good one or a bad one, you're always being a role model. You do something bad, like that's a bad role model.
Yeah.
A good role model, you know what I mean. So now that I always embrace, and I always like to highlight teachers, and I feel like you're gonna be a great teacher in class.
Thank you.
When do you guys, transition into that? Do you guys know?
So we just this past 2 weeks just started introducing kids back in the classroom. We only have like 40% of students back in because obviously it's not mandatory right now. So we have kids back in. I just got to meet some of my 7th graders for the first time, and it was amazing. Like there's no feeling like just having people in front of you, knowing that you're impacting their day. And I think that's a key takeaway, is like we all have our moments of being sad, and sometimes you can tell. Like that's what I miss about being in the classroom, is like when they're on the computer, there's this facade, but when they're in front of me, I'm just like, whoa, okay, I got a really weird vibe from you. Well, what is going on? And you can really connect with them, and you can really help somebody. And so I'm super happy to have my kids back in the classroom. And yeah, it's behind shields and behind masks, but I think we all need that like comfort space. And for some kids, school is that space.
Yeah,
so
they get away from the bad just to go to, like, some kids eat only at school.
Exactly.
Some kids only get attention at school. Some kids run away from life at school. Some kids, I've talked to them, and they don't want to go back home.
Exactly.
Because there's bad stuff at home. There's neglect at home. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess teachers are very a necessity. I just don't, for me personally, I don't know if the educational system is set up to, transition kids back into school. I feel like it's lacking in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
As a teacher, I guess no one in the district is going to listen to this, but what would be like some advice you would give other teachers? Because I have a lot of friends that are teachers. What would be an advice to like those teachers that are kind of losing their drive?
A lot of them are losing steam.
Yeah,
for sure. For me, this year it was less about this is exactly what I have to teach them out of a book, as opposed to really thinking about like that social emotional aspect. So any of like let's say I had 20 projects planned out for a semester, I cut that down by a lot. And I said, we're really going to take our time, and we're not going to be performance task based. Like, I'm not just be like, here's your test, I hope you pass it. It's like, no, we're going to take one thing, we're really going to break it down and work on it together. So by the time you submit your final project, all of you are going to get an A, because we went super slow. I'm not overwhelming them with work. If I see they are completely like wiped, okay, you know what, we're gonna play a podcast today, and you're not going to have to do anything with that besides just listen and just talk. It's not going to come with a grade though. You need to like really just take a step back and realize the more you're pressuring them to be exactly the same that we were in person, the more you're pressuring yourself too. So it is not that time to grade absolutely everything and give them the same amount of work. It's about making that little bit of work that you do give them really matter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jeez. Yeah, because I work at a school, and then as soon as the pandemic started, my whole thing was like, yeah, that's it. Teachers are being replaced by computers, and but no, like you need that social interaction.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of them don't know how to socialize anymore. It's funny. Like, kids will walk into the classroom without ever looking at me like, hey, whoa, 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 whoa. Look at me and let's say hi real quick. Like, let's start working back to that. Because when they have been in school, like, they are super social. You're always going to have some shy people, of course. But it's like they need somebody that they know they can trust, and not a teacher who's just going to, like, be there because they're supposed to and that's their job.
Is that your biggest goal?
Is to
get students to trust you.
Oh, absolutely.
To develop the social skills.
Yeah, I think every little thing. Like if this wasn't COVID, like with some of my kids, we practice the handshake, because some of them give you like a little fish hand, and it's like, wait, no, that's super gross. Let's practice that, because it's more than just preparing them for college, because realistically, not everybody ends up there. Some of them have to work because that's just the way that their family is, and it's like, but you're still going to need those social interactions. You're still going to need somebody to communicate with. You're still going to need to know how to write simple letters to like your boss or to somebody, depending on what the situation calls for. So it's like, if I can help you trust me, we're going to really start to build those like public speaking skills and those social skills and being aware of what's happening around you.
Damn, that's very important.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I wish I would have learned that in high school, because I was very awkward. I was like very direct. I was very blunt.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of those things kind of limited me from developing friendships, developing relationships where I could have blossomed a lot sooner.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that as a teacher, that's a big responsibility, for like personal responsibility. Just carrying yourself as a decent human, I think that goes a long ways. Because all the educational stuff comes regardless. Like kids start learning from a laptop, an iPad, and maybe they embrace that more than an actual like whiteboard or a screen. But the social construct is I think it's what we're lacking.
Yeah, if you build that, you can really make them learn. Like if you build that like foundation of that relationship with your students first, if they know that when they walk into your classroom that it's not like a prison cell for an hour, that it's actually their space, they're gonna give you more of their effort. And I see that hands down with my students. It's they come in and they're super excited, and it's like, hey, listen, if we're not doing something, y'all can have fun, y'all can relax, but as soon as I need your attention, we have your attention. It's kind of like this balance. Because kids aren't meant to go for that long just paying attention.
Right.
We none of us can really focus for that long.
None of us.
So it's like it's really understanding how they're meant to still be kids, and acknowledging that and letting them be, and then giving them the information and then giving them a break and just helping them out.
Okay, so Jen, do you are you gonna be teaching out there, or are you gonna come and bless the desert here with
so I know for this next year for sure I'm staying out there, just because with everything that's happened with my diagnosis, I have my doctors out there, and it's a matter of continuing my healthcare with them, because they know everything and they're the ones that have been doing my treatment. But the desert definitely has my heart. Like my mom and my dad are out there, my niece is out there, 2 of my brothers are out there, and I've always thought if an opportunity rises where I can go back to the desert, like I'm going back. The heat is going to take some getting used to, like for sure, because in LA it's always 20 degrees cooler, but the desert's home. Like people need to appreciate that.
That's very true.
Yeah,
it's a gem, and a lot of people just mistreat it.
Yeah.
Do you have all your doctors like around the school that you're at, UCLA, USC, or is this like a UCLA more?
So
where are you?
So
I just want to do a shout out to these doctors that are.
They're all like in Arcadia and in Pasadena.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they're awesome. They definitely aren't just there to do their job the same way as an educator. You're not just there to do your job. You're working with real people, and they acknowledge that. So I have like a surgeon, a plastic surgeon, an oncologist. I have a gynecologist, and then I had somebody who froze my eggs for me before chemo. Like. Oh. They're all out there, and they've been super compassionate and amazing. So if anybody ever needs doctors and can go out there, go out there.
Is there anything else you want to share before we wrap it up? I really do appreciate it. I really appreciate you coming out, being so vulnerable, expressing and telling, just showing people that everything's okay as long as you take it like one step at a time. You just choked me up a few times. That I think it just comes with me trying to put myself in your shoes and figuring out like how frozen I would be to what would be my next step. And like you talk about it like all nonchalant, but I'm sure it's like it took you to
me a
very
lot.
dark places.
Yeah, it took me a lot of having to overcome fear and insecurity, and just, I mean, as humans, the things that we're so scared of is being so unsure of what could happen. But that's the thing. What if something great happens instead? And for me, I'm still here. I didn't think I was going to be at first.
I'm glad.
Thank you. I'm so glad too. But I think that's what it is. It's just, we're so fearful of what could happen that's bad, and we're never thinking of, well, what good could come out of it. And for me, as soon as I figured out, okay, this is going to be part of my story, I need to tell it, because there has to be a reason that I was diagnosed with this, that I was given cancer. And I think that's to be that person for other people, that if they need somebody to talk to, whatever it is, even if it's not cancer, I'm there, because I've had to learn so much about myself, and I've had to just create even more empathy for anybody. And I think that's why I was chosen to have this.
But not a lot of people would have that privilege to be like, okay, you decided to take on that role. Would you say that people can reach out to you and ask you stuff?
No, absolutely.
Work through Facebook or Instagram, people can...
like I'm completely there. I have an IG page just for my cancer journey, if that comes up. But if it comes to wanting to freeze your eggs, because even just as women, we're getting older, like I've gone through that now, I can talk about that. Or if you have a family member and they have no idea what to do, like even if I don't know you, you can reach out to me if you have questions, because if you don't know about something and you're curious, find out. That's the beauty of being able to learn.
I appreciate it. Thank you. We're out, guys.
Bye.
Wow.